Hello everybody, salut and welcome to another French GCSE and iGCSE video tutorial. So in this particular video, we're going to look at the reading exam again and some general tips for the reading exam overall. I'm going to take you through these, how to prepare for the reading exam, how to maximize the efficiency of your revision and score as many marks as possible. And these tips will apply to students of any exam board and any level as well. Okay. Firstly, my name is Dhananjay Talwar. I studied French and Italian for my MA at the University of Cambridge, graduating back in 2015. And I've been an educator since that time and mostly as a full-time tutor. I've learned more than 20 languages myself to different levels, of course, but including at least 9 to fluency. It's something I'm really passionate about. It's a real hobby of mine, and I love motivating and enthusing my students as well. And of course, naturally helping them to achieve their goals, like their target grades. So in all, I've helped more than 500 different students to achieve or exceed their target grade in French GCSE or iGCSE. As a tutor, I have helped students for other subjects and languages as well. I've taught 8 languages so far to GCSE and iGCSE level, and some at higher levels too. So this is an overview, a glance at the French GCSE and iGCSE exam boards. So as of July 2025, there are 4 exam boards for GCSE French and 2 of them for iGCSE French. And as a student, you should, of course, recognize your own exam board here. And yeah, it is a good idea to be aware of this, what exam board you're studying as early as possible. There's considerable overlap in terms of the subject matter, and every exam board will test you in terms of reading, but also speaking, writing, and listening. The topic areas do have considerable overlap too, but of course, it's beneficial to use practice papers for your exam board. This is a list of some of the most common different question types that can come up in the reading paper across different exam boards again. This is not an exhaustive or definitive list, but yeah, it's a thorough list of the most common question types across different exam boards. These include gap fill questions, multiple choice questions, true, false, or not mentioned questions, questions where you have to identify the correct statements, questions where you've got to answer in English, questions where you have to answer in French, and translation. So for all of the French GCSE exam boards, not the French iGCSE exam boards, translation is part of the reading paper too. And that is specifically translation from French into English, which comes right at the end of the reading paper for the French GCSE exam boards only. However, that is actually something I cover in a different video, a different section, which I highly recommend going through as well. All of these other question types written out here, I cover all of those together in one video, which is a video where I go through each of the question types one by one and give you the techniques required to answer them. I highly recommend having a look at that too. For now, though, we're going through more general tips related to the reading exam overall. So the reading exam is, of course, a timed written paper. Questions are usually multiple choice, but they can also require short written answers, which could be either in English or in French. The questions are all based on texts, of course, and the student can read through each text as many times as they want or need. That is, of course, a big difference between the reading exam and the listening exam. And it's important to note that in the listening exam, the student will hear everything twice. In the reading exam, though, it's the time that's the real limit. Obviously, as a student, you need to aim to and very much attempt to finish all of the questions within the time you've got, and to be able to check through all of your answers within that time as well. So that is very important. But you can potentially go back and reread questions, reread texts as well from previous questions as many times as you want. So the time is the real limit. You could even go back and reread the same text or question 3, 4, 5 times if you really wanted to, and crucially, if you had enough time. Okay, here are some of my top tips for the French GCSE or iGCSE reading paper. So, read through the instructions for each question thoroughly. Um, Familiarize yourself with the technique required for each of the question types. And as mentioned, I have a different video on that where I take you through each of those most common question types across all of the exam boards, actually, with examples and go through the technique step by step that is required for every single one of those questions, which should be very useful. Learn topic specific vocabulary. I know some students are often tempted to skip through vocabulary and just focus on the topics they think are most likely to come up in the exam. That's definitely risky, though. I wouldn't do that because yeah, you can't actually predict which topics will be there in the reading exam. So I would revise topic specific vocabulary across the whole range of topics. And if you're unsure what the topic areas for your exam board are, you should check the website of your exam board too. Exam technique, lastly, makes a really big difference. That's why it's in capitals here, just to emphasize the difference it can make. Exam technique is huge for French GCSE and iGCSE. Scoring well in these exams is definitely not just about French ability. That might sound counterintuitive because these are French exams, but exam technique and knowing how to answer each question really makes a big difference for students. And that's what I go through in many of these videos. And that's something I really recommend practicing as you absorb the material in these videos too. Okay, a few more tips to do with your reading exam. Time management is, of course, very important. As a student, you, of course, need to know how much time has already gone and how much time is remaining in your French GCSE or iGCSE reading paper. This should be written out for you very clearly. No matter where you're doing the exam, there should be a clock or some way of keeping track of the time. And it is important, definitely, that you do that. So you need to look back at the clock. You need to be aware of how much time has gone and therefore how much time you also have left to complete all of the remaining questions. And make sure that when you think through how much time is remaining, you also factor in the fact that you've got to check through everything. So you've got to check through all of your work and check through all of your answers. That's what I would do just after I finished all of the questions. I'd go back over everything I've written, all the questions, and check to make sure I haven't made any small mistakes that I can correct. Um, so all of those exam skills are really important too. Practice in exam conditions. This is usually the best way of practicing. So that means not allowing yourself to look up words, making sure you practice in timed conditions as well without giving yourself any extra time that you wouldn't have in your final exam. And try and practice using past paper materials, particularly as you get closer to the final exams. I would prioritize using past paper materials. You can find some on the website of your exam board. You can get in touch with me as well if you're struggling to get hold of any. For those exam boards like AQA and Pearson Edexcel GCSE, which have just changed their format for French GCSE exam papers, there can be fewer sample materials available. I would try and save the most accurate ones for later. Try and use the most accurate ones, the ones that are going to be as close as possible to what will come up in your exam, closer to the actual exam time. Okay, so exam technique, as I've said a few times, is really valuable for French GCSE and iGCSE papers and for other subjects potentially as well. Here are some key parts of exam technique that students often find difficult and can lose marks on. So first of all, you have to make sure that you read every question and the possible options fully. I would do that before even attempting to answer the question. So the first thing I would do in a reading paper for each question is to read through that text, read the instructions thoroughly too, make sure that you understand those and what the question requires of you, so what it's asking. Then I would go through the possible answers and read through all of those, and then go back to the text and try to answer the question. But I'd make sure to read the text, the instructions very thoroughly, and all of the possible options so you know what to look out for before having a go at the actual question. Likewise, check through your work thoroughly after completing the question. A common tip is to put a symbol like a star or an asterisk next to questions that you found particularly difficult so that you can come back to those questions first while you're checking. This is basically just a note to yourself that once your checking time starts or once you've finished all of the questions in the paper, you should go back to those questions where you put a star or an asterisk first, because those are the especially difficult ones and are likely to require more checking time. Checking through your work is vital. Um, Even the best candidates are likely to spot at least one or two mistakes while they check through their work. Obviously, as you check, you'll be able to correct those mistakes, so it can directly boost your marks. Definitely worth doing. And ensure you're aware of how much time has gone in the exam and how much time has left. You don't have to keep checking the clock every few seconds. That's unrealistic, but do check through it periodically and make sure that you're on track. You should then be aware, based on how much time has already gone and how much time is left, whether you can take a bit more time over questions or whether you need to speed up to be able to get through everything in the exam paper and check through all of your work too. Check how many marks are available for every question. That will be written very clearly after each question in the exam paper, and that is important because it tells you how many pieces of information you need to provide, usually, for that particular question, and also potentially how long you should spend on it or how much importance to give that question. Of course, a 5-mark question is more valuable than a 1-mark question, and you're likely to want to spend more time on a 5-mark question. Answer in the same language that the question itself is written in. This is a general rule which is true, and you can follow this if you're in any doubt. However, the exam paper should make it very clear to you which language you have to answer the question in. And last, but definitely not least, do not leave a question blank, especially for multiple choice type questions. It's criminal for multiple choice questions, I feel, to leave questions blank. However, even in general, you're definitely better off having a go. There's no harm in doing so, because if you don't have a guess, then you've got no chance whatsoever of getting the correct answer, of getting marks. Whereas if you have a go, at least you're giving yourself some chance of guessing the right answer. And if the question is multiple choice in any way, you do have often a decent chance of selecting the correct answer. Here are some more common mistakes that students often make. And these are traps to particularly watch out for commonly for students in the French GCSE or iGCSE reading. So try not to write down the first answer option that you come across. This is quite common where we see students doing this. It's quite tempting. I can understand that because once you've read through the question, the text, and you've also read through all of your options, and then you reread the text and you see, oh, I can see one of the options for that particular question here in the text. It might well seem as if that has to be the correct answer, but they will often try to trick you. That is not rare at all for these exams. And for that reason, it's dangerous to write down the first answer option that you come across. Take your time, read through all of the material, and make sure you take in all of the details too, because that first answer option may then be contradicted later on in the same text. So take a bit of time and don't just write down the first thing you come across. Falling for trick questions, likewise, in terms of, say, synonyms and false friends, the answer itself may not be written in exactly the same way as it is in the question. It might be that a synonym is used in the text instead. It might be that in the text they've paraphrased it, they've rephrased it, or phrased it in a different way. So watch out for these difficulties too. False friends, again, often trip people up. So watch out for those. Again, try not to be fooled by these false friends, such as thinking that librairie means library, for example, whereas it's actually a bookshop. But there are many other false friends as well. Misunderstanding negatives. That's why it's really important to read through the question and the options thoroughly and carefully, because negatives change the entire meaning of that particular statement or question. So look out for those, and not answering the question's exact requirements either. So Yeah, you have to pay attention to what the question is asking you to do, how many marks are available as well, because you've got to make sure that your answer gives all of the information required of you to allow you to score full marks. Okay, a common area of difficulty now is unfamiliar words. So, for the exam boards AQA and Pearson EdXL GCSE, who've recently changed their format for French GCSE, there is actually a defined vocabulary list which you can find online that you can use to revise. And there should not be, as of the exams from 2026 onwards, there should not be words in your reading paper outside of that defined vocabulary list. But that is only for those two particular exam boards currently. For other exam boards, there's no definitive vocabulary list which you can revise from. So there can be words that are unknown and unfamiliar that can certainly come up. Even if there is a defined vocab list for your exam board, you might not be familiar with, you might not memorize every single word on that list. And so these techniques to deal with unfamiliar words can be really useful. So the first thing to do for unfamiliar words is to see if there are words hidden inside the unknown word that you do know. For example, the word froideur contains the word froid. So if you are unsure what froideur meant and you've never seen that word before, you could try thinking to yourself, well, I can see the word froid, which means cold. I know what that is. I know that that means cold. Therefore, the word froideur is likely to be linked to froid in some way. And so it's probably got something to do with the cold. And that logic would be completely true in this case, because froideur means coldness, the fact of being cold. So many words, many French words, even though they seem unfamiliar, could be linked to other French words you know. You can also see if the word is similar to any other French words that you do know. So even if it doesn't contain a French word inside it, it may simply look similar to other French words that you do know. For example, boisson, which is a drink, looks kind of similar to the verb boire, to drink. Many French GCSE or iGCSE students would be familiar with the verb boire, meaning to drink. They may not potentially know the noun boisson, but if they come across that noun, they might well be able to create a link and realize that it looks similar to boire, and therefore there's probably some connection there. You can also see if the word is similar to other English words that you do know. For example, politesse, meaning politeness, sounds and looks very similar to the English equivalent. So if you came across a word like politesse, you may just be able to use English to work it out. You can also use other languages that you know potentially too. French is a Latin or Romance language, so it's related to Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian. And there are plenty of links out there if you want to exploit them. Okay, now just time for a quick quiz to test your knowledge of the French GCSE and iGCSE reading paper. So, firstly, what is the first thing to do or to read through when you start a new question in the reading exam? I'm going to give a bit of time to think over it before revealing your answer. Okay, I'll show the answer now. So the first thing to do is read through all of the instructions, of course, for that question, and make sure you've understood them fully. This is something to really emphasize because many students will not do this and risk losing marks that they could have got otherwise. Make sure you understand all of the instructions. They give you a very good indication of what to do to answer the question. And then I would read through the question itself. And try and work out how to answer it. Question 2 is true or false. You should always answer questions in the reading exam in the same language that the question itself is written in. So is that true or is it false? I'll give a bit of time before revealing the answer. Okay, let me show you the answer now. So this is true, although the question paper will also make it clear which language you should answer each question in. So if you're not sure at all, you can simply follow this rule. But if you read through the question paper, that will also tell you what language to use when answering. Okay, question 3. So true or false again. If you do not understand a French word that you come across in a text, you should simply completely ignore it and move on. I'll give a bit of time to think through this. Okay, and I will reveal the answer now. So this is false. It depends really on the situation. So if you think that particular word could be important, if it seems vital for an answer, then there are many techniques that you can use to try and work out the meaning of that unknown word. Context can also very much help. Try and use the context and these techniques to help you. They may well require a bit of practice as well, but there are ways of potentially working out unknown French words, and you don't have to completely ignore them and move on. It depends on how important that word is to potentially scoring a mark or two. Okay, and question 4. Why is it important to check the number of marks available for every question on the reading exam? So, a little bit of time to think over the answer for this one. Okay, let me show you the answer now. So, that is because this usually acts as a guide as to how much information you have to provide or as to how many details you need to give. If a question's worth 2 marks, for example, then that means that you normally have to provide 2 different pieces of information, and it guides you as to how to answer the question as well. So definitely check through the number of marks available for every single question. Okay, if you've got any questions at all on any of that, or if you'd like to know more about more personalized help that I offer, contact me by email or through Facebook or Instagram. You can contact me by email, through Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I post on all of those social media platforms every single day with advice on GCSEs and iGCSEs, particularly languages, how to maximize your marks, how to prepare for exams, how to revise and study languages, and so on. And of course, I share some of my love of languages with the world and encourage people to learn languages too. I have many resources out there, including free resources for French GCSE and iGCSE, as well as for other languages. And I have a Facebook group too for French GCSE and iGCSE students and their parents, which is free to join, with plenty of useful resources and advice in there too. And I do one-to-one classes as well, group classes too, courses, and help in various other formats. So if you'd like to know more about any of it, just get in touch.